Thank you so much, Frisia, and welcome to all of you who are here today on day 2. And as we're about to step into a conversation and an experience about intimacy, we're going to take a moment to arrive. We're spending a lot of time thinking here and having really engaging ideas. And this conversation and this experience is going to invite you into your thinking and your feeling. So for a moment, I'm going to ask you to please put one of your hands on your heart. And close your eyes just for a second. And drop your awareness into your heart. And connect to one thing that you're holding in your heart right now. I'm going to invite you to turn to someone seated next to you and share that one thing in the form of one sentence. And then we're all going to come back together. So please share with someone next to you what's in your heart. Thank you so much. Pretty full hearts in the room. We have a lot to talk about. Sorry to cut you off. We have fun places to go. But isn't it delightful that we have so much in our hearts that we boisterously want to engage each other and share? That's what I'm talking about. So, yay, you're in the right room, we're in the right space together, and I cried just before coming up here. I am so moved by the human beings I'm sharing this stage with. I'm so moved to be having this conversation with all of you. I'm profoundly passionate about having conversations that are the truths we avoid engaging, because I'm convinced that that's where the greatest gold lies. And this conversation in particular about intimacy is critical and timely and relevant. Oh yay, how fitting. Let's do it. These 5 experts up here with me on stage each bring a profoundly unique, insightful perspective to contribute to this conversation and their own mastery that they've been honing through their lives in being uncompromising stands for safety and intimacy. It is my honor and overwhelming feeling of play and delight to get to introduce them to you. So first, I would like to introduce to you Celeste Hirschman. She's here between William and Max. She is the co-founder and co-creator of the cutting-edge experiential Somatica method of sex and relationship coaching and trains coaches in that method. She also has her own private coaching practice where she sees clients in her San Francisco office. Please give a warm welcome to Celeste Hirschman. Next, in the navy print, in the dashing shirt at the end, is my friend Chris Marcel Murchison. He's a passionate advocate for positive workplace culture. In his broad career spanning higher education, for-profit and not-for-profit fields, he's focused his energy on developing creative means to build community at work and practices that support an employee experience of deep respect, connection, joy, and generative learning, and all things good and sparkling. Chris currently works as an independent creative thought partner, advisor, and consultant to organizations ready to reimagine the possibilities of their culture. Please give a very warm welcome to Chris Marcel Murchison. To Chris's left is Jay Bendit. Jay Bendit dedicated their entire life educating and coaching people around workplace inclusion, from personal conversations at the dinner table to boardrooms full of executives, as a co-founder of the Argo Collective. As a non-binary person, Jay works to create safe and welcoming environments for people of all marginalized identities, allowing more visibility for future generations to see possibilities and opportunities for their own lives. Please give a warm welcome to Jay. To their left is Max Mashier. Max Mashier spent his entire career in the tech industry working as a user experience designer. All those years working in tech, he was perceived as a woman. When he came out as a transgender, that shifted his entire world. He realized he could be the change and help improve gender inclusion issues among his very using his very unique perspective in the society and his skills in user experience. That's how he met Jay, and they started Argo Collective. Please give a warm welcome to Max. And finally, here on my right is William Winters, who works with his feet planted in two worlds. He's a seasoned digital campaign strategist for progressive organizations and causes, currently serving as senior digital strategist for California-based Courage Campaign. William is also a leader in the Bay Area's polyamorous and sex-positive communities. In recent years, he's moderated large online forums, appeared in the SF Chronicle and the New York Times, and presented numerous panels and workshops. He's also a Somatica-trained sex and relationship coach. William is based in Oakland. Please give a warm welcome to William and all of our panelists. All right. So why are we having this conversation now? Why does this conversation matter at this point in time? We all know that, yes, psychological safety not only matters, it is one of the leading factors to teams working together well. We also happen to be in a year that is in the wake of the Me Too tidal wave. And there has been societal, workplace, relationship-based, and home-based repercussions of the rising awareness of sexual harassment. So it's obvious that we have ineptitude with relationship and intimacy. In terms of Me Too specifically, here are some of the facts. Mentorship between men and women at work is down, which reinforces the already existing power structure. Not ideal. Data point about that illustrates how many men are afraid of making mistakes and don't want to do anything wrong, and so then they don't engage at all, comes from Sylvia Ann Hewlett, CEO of the Center for Talent Innovation. 64% of senior men avoid solo interactions with junior women because they fear rumors about their motives. And that was before the Me Too movement. According to a survey commissioned by the Lean In Initiative, the number of male managers who are uncomfortable mentoring women has tripled since the Me Too movement first started back in October 2017. Great, an opportunity for change. Okay, next, in terms of broader, this is gonna happen the whole time. In terms of broader gender and sexuality conversation that has been going on for a similarly long time and has had much less visibility than Me Too, when we think about our trans colleagues, LGBT colleagues, their experience is disproportionately concentrated with harassment and misunderstanding at work to their cis and straight colleagues. That same fear exists of messing up, not knowing what to say, and so not engaging, which has personal implications for relationship, creativity, and sense of belonging. Here's a data point for you. In its 2016 report, Injustice at Every Turn, the National Center for Transgender Equality found that 90% of the nearly 6,500 transgender and gender nonconforming people surveyed reported experiencing harassment or mistreatment on the job or took actions to avoid it. We can do so much better. 47% reported being fired, not hired, or denied a promotion because of their gender identity. We are failing. We are failing each other sorely. And as we're all here with the inspiration to move towards more adaptive, more responsive organizations, we know that for those of us who sit in HR seats, the response is not only to lean more heavily into policy, it is not only to lean more heavily into rules. Rules generally don't fix things. We need to make sure that our policy is inclusive, it is empowering, it is responsive, but if we lean on that alone, we are lost. Yay, another opportunity! So what do we get to do about it? That's why we're convening this conversation, to bring together people who rarely are heard in the workplace, who have spent their entire lives cultivating mastery in the realm of relationship and intimacy, because teams are knit by relationship. So let's get really good at relationship and make some kick-ass teams and make work amazing for everyone. That's what we're going to do. And the arc of our experience is we're going to have 3 movements of conversation and 3 activities for you to engage in, because we want to help build your muscles and your fluency and your toolkit today. There will also be time for questions. And I'm looking at my friends in the back. Are we using Slido? Oh, no kidding. We're not. Right. Sorry. Totally forgot. Mic runners. There will be 2 mic runners. So as we're going through this conversation, please note your questions, because we'll come to them. So that's the ride we're all going on together. If you want to flee right now, it's your last opportunity. Smart choice, because this is going to be awesome. Okay, so if we're not playing, it's boring. So movement 1 is we're going to start with some level setting. Where are we? So to my brilliant colleagues up here on the stage, my first question for you is, when you think about the concepts of safety and intimacy, in several sentences, what do you want to convey about those ideas to expand upon our current definitions of them and our opportunities in engaging them? Whoever feels called to speak first, I invite you to take the mic, and whoever feels called to add will go after.
Hi. So I don't know if some of you were in the breakout session yesterday about the voice, like the great minds. Who was there? Yeah. So for me, safety and intimacy is part of what we did in that session, where the facilitator was asking to talk about our fear voice, like the protector voice. And I think safety is some place where we want to be on our own, is a very lonely place, where intimacy is like being vulnerable enough to share what we feel. And the first time we do it, it's scary. But as soon as you start doing it more and more, you're still alive, and you're even stronger. That's weird. Vulnerable means stronger. That's not what we're being raised with. And that's why, for me, intimacy goes with vulnerability. And there's more openness in intimacy than safety.
Thank you.
Yeah, when I think about creating safety, it has a lot to do with being willing to hear other people's feelings and experiences that are different from you, and also you might have an impact on other people that you don't even know that you're having, and they're terrified to tell you because they're afraid you're going to defend yourself or explain to them why their feelings are wrong. So to me, a safety around feelings is to be open to other people's experiences, even if you've made a challenging impact on somebody, to be able to hear them out and not try to shut them down, so that they can say, okay, somebody understands what's going on for me. Sometimes that's all people need. There doesn't need to be this big, huge change, but just the feeling people are craving so much to just be seen and understood. So to me, a big part of safety is creating a place where people can be seen and understood in their differences and in their hurts sometimes.
I once heard that the feeling of safety is the ability to breathe. And when we don't feel safe, we're holding our breath. And so allowing space for people to just breathe. And intimacy is breathing together in harmony. And so we're working towards creating those spaces.
Beautiful.
I love that. Maybe the word aloha, I think, is sharing the same breath. And so maybe there's this loss of an experience of aloha in our organizations. A lot of companies these days talk about wanting their employees to bring their full and authentic selves to work. And I think, to offer that, you need to also offer a place where people can feel seen and heard and trusted. Actually, I want to say that I think trust needs to be in the environment to allow those things to happen. And I think in some ways, organizations need to earn our trust.
Yeah, and it's on? Is this on? Okay. Yeah, I think that safety is a relative concept. It's an internally generated concept, but there's so much that workplace culture can do to help people to feel safer, to actually bring their alternative their true selves, their authentic selves to the workplace. And I think that unless we're sort of going against the stream and actively, very actively saying that certain conversations are okay and making really intentional space for people to be themselves, then we're going to default to the mainstream conversations that are informed by the wider culture, which are often anti-trans and anti-LGBT and stereotyping for people of color and hard to be honest about whatever sort of alternative family structures or lifestyles you may be pursuing outside of the workplace.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much. I have lots of feelings, and I'm going to keep them to myself for right now. Perhaps some synthesis at the end. So, if that's where we are with safety and intimacy, if we can expand our understanding of those two concepts, that yes, we need safety, and we're actually trying to move toward intimacy, I'd love now, in our second portion of this movement, to paint the landscape with more detail about where are we today? What's the current state of safety and intimacy at work and in society, the point that it feels relevant as well. Again, whoever feels moved to begin.
Yeah, I see two streams of things that probably need to be addressed. One of them is people having sex and relationships with each other at work, which as much as we like to hope that that doesn't happen or pretend or make rules about it, I can tell you as a sex and relationship coach, people are having casual sex with their coworkers, people are having long-term relationship with their coworkers, people are having secret relationships with their coworkers, people are having out relationships, people are asking each other out. And my experience around sexual issues is that when you tell people not to do it, mostly what happens is they do it anyway, but with very little skill. And so I really feel like there needs to be a better conversation about about the fact that it happens and about how to maybe ask someone with some savvy to be able to read people's responses, to be able to take no gracefully and not push it. You know, to teach people how to do those things. Now, I don't know if people can do that or if people just have their, don't date anyone policy and then people just get in trouble. That, to me, seems like it doesn't work. The other piece that I think is really important is that emotions have been left out of the workplace, as though when people walk in the door, they've left their emotions behind, which is the way that we handle that is very inefficient, because then people are grumbling and complaining and, gossiping about how much their boss is stressing them out and how much they can't stand their coworkers, but nobody can say, hey, I need to talk to you about something, because it's we're not supposed to cry at work, we're not supposed to have feelings, it's, embarrassing or unprofessional, and that creates extreme inefficiency and disconnection and unhappiness, I think, in the workplace.
Sorry, you wanted to say?
I love what you just shared. It feels so important to me. I have experienced over my 30 plus years in the workplace that there are oftentimes not a lot of kind of meaningful opportunities for conversation and skilled connection with each other. And I think particularly now as organizations are moving really fast and the world feels really complex and things are just moving really quickly, that people oftentimes just don't create the space and the time to sit with each other and connect. And so I'm just a real strong believer in the necessity of connection. In fact, people in psychology talk about connection being one of the core human needs. And I think we need to have that need met in the workplace. And I don't feel like it needs to be, I think those needs can be met in micro moments and in small ways that kind of accumulate into really powerful senses and feelings of belonging in the bigger sense. But I think it needs to start somewhere. It needs to start with creating the space for people to just have the opportunity to share kind of really what's in their hearts and what's on their minds, and do that in a space that feels accepting and trusting.
Yeah, so I might start to be like more pointing, and I think I'm very comfortable doing it. I sit in that room with like mostly women, if I'm not wrong. And from what you said, I totally agree with you. And I would add on that, men should share their feeling, should be more vulnerable. Managers, leaderships, CEO should be the one starting that movement, and not again the women or the minorities. Because women are known to be more sensitive. So at work, what happens is like as the masculine, male-dominated world, we teach them to not show their emotions so they match the mold of the male-dominated world. And I think that's bullshit, because that's the opposite. The opposite should be like male embracing their feelings and male sharing when they feel something. And I don't want your advice to be heard by women and say, okay, so I'm the one who has to share more my feelings and create that space. No, like what should be done is like male like leaderships and managers should be the one creating that space and be the first one to say, hey, I am vulnerable now because I'm showing that this and that. And I think that would be like definitely more powerful and more fair.
1 or 2 more minutes for addition to this aspect.
I mean, just to follow up very quickly on Max's excellent point, I think that men have a lot of work to do in society at large, and you know, I think it starts with being able to acknowledge, you know, that we have feelings to begin with, and that it's like actually okay to like be feeling people, and then for you know, workplaces to create a culture in which like people actually connect on their feelings. Like, you know, like your check-ins, your stand-up meetings are not just you know, what's your to-do list for the day, but an actual like weather check, you know, where people are encouraged to talk about their feelings. And I mean, I think that one minor change can help to introduce a conversation about emotion that sometimes doesn't exist in companies and organizations.
Can I just add on really quickly? I was reading an HBR article recently which talked about the increasing levels of loneliness in the workplace, and it just really struck me as being really significant. And so we have all of these people in the workplace who are feeling lonely, almost, you know, desperate for some kind of connection. So I think the opportunity for all of us to create these moments in our work days where people can really feel seen and can connect with each other in a meaningful and connected way might also help people feel, again, a sense of belonging and decrease a sense of loneliness.
Lovely. Thank you all so much. So if we're here to try to create breath in each other individually and to share breath collectively, it's clear that we're not very good at feeling, and that feelings are shamed and avoided in our workplaces, and that's having an enormously detrimental effect. Some other pieces that I want to just add to the contextual understanding that came up in our prior conversations were that the impact of technology and how we interact with technology and then switch into human-human relationships is atrophying our ability to be in relationship with humans and to feel and to have empathy. Also, physical touch, just as much as emotional feelings are completely rejected in the workplace, is also pushed out of the workplace. And that's a core aspect of how we connect as human beings. Also, the current reality of avoidance of that which is uncomfortable, which results in awkwardness, which is omnipresent, which then creates this reinforcing loop of I'm just gonna let that sit over here and you get to have a very disconnected experience at work, and we're just going to be nice about it. So right now we're being nice, not really feeling, not really being real. So we have opportunity to build our ability to feel, which is what we're going to do right now in an activity called the I Feel game. So I'm going to invite Celeste to introduce it, and then we're going to model, and then you get to play this game with a lovely human being sitting next to you.
So this is something that we teach to our coaches in training to help them teach their clients how to talk about feelings, and particularly present moment feelings. Because usually we say like, oh, I felt this way, or I never want to feel that way again. But we don't talk about what's happening right now with the way that we're feeling in response to the person in front of us. So Larissa and I are going to do a little demonstration of present moment feelings. We're just going to look at each other and we're going to say back and forth both how we feel and how what they say, the other person says, impacts us and how we feel in response. So it's not just like, how do I feel about the day, but how do I feel in response to you? And you feel response to strangers. So if you do this exercise, you don't have to do it with someone you know. As soon as you sit in front of them, you'll feel something. I promise. Okay. I can start. Yeah.
Fabulous.
So I feel a combination of nervousness and urgency because I want so badly to get the message across. And when I look at you, I feel your love and support, and it makes me feel much more calm and easeful.
When you share that, I feel my roots sink down out of my feet because I want to be a grounding force for you. And I also am just so present to the amount of love I have for you in my heart.
When you say you want to be a grounding force for me, part of me just wants to let you off the hook, that you don't have to do anything. Like, part of me feels sort of protective of you, like, and wants to say, oh, I'll be okay. Yeah.
When you say that, it makes me feel like I want to throw off my shoes and go like maraud around like a little kid. And I feel really playful, and I'm not taking this seriously at all.
That makes me feel really relaxed. Yeah.
Awesome. And when you feel relaxed, I feel my shoulders drop down my back, and I breathe more deeply in my lungs.
I think that's a good day. Okay, so we've been doing this for a while. So don't feel like you have to have such direct access to your moment-to-moment feelings. If you're sort of like, oh, I don't know exactly what I feel, or give me a second, let me check inside, take your time and just notice how the person impacts you. You can feel nervous, awkward, excited. There's no wrong response. Okay?
Lovely. Thank you. So you're going to find a partner, and you're going to play feeling table tennis for 3 rounds. So you're going to go back and forth 3 times, and then we're going to come back together as a room. See you soon. Oh my gosh, the I Feel game is so fun. So many feelings. It's like a bubbling stew pot happening in the room right now. But I'm going to ask you to turn that stew pot back to simmer, because we have places to go. So get back here, and let's do this thing. But please thank your partner as you come to a close, because we are about to go on to movement 2 of the conversation. So in this movement, we're going to explore the benefits of bringing intimacy into the workplace, and also talking about first steps toward change. So, my lovely, brilliant ones, let's popcorn out. What do you see as the benefits of bringing intimacy to work?
I can share one tool we do because we work together with Jay, and that's the best business partnership I ever had in my entire life, and I work with a lot of people in startups and innovative places. And one thing we do every Fridays, at least we try, we do a success and learning, 20 minutes discussion, the 2 of us. We're only 2 working together every day, and so we would expect that we already connect enough, but no, we saw some tensions and some stuff. So every Friday we take 20 minutes. So we call it success and learning, to not call it success and failure, because we see each failing as an opportunity to learn for next time. So we spend 20 minutes of sharing together on a spreadsheet what happened this week, what did we really want, and what was not really good, and what we can learn from next time. And the biggest column that we feel is like, what did I feel this week, and how you made me feel this week. And it's always like amazing how we like openly share, and that how over time it built a strong band between each of us, and it's literally creating the values for the job we do. You want to add on that?
Yeah, it ends up being almost like a collective diary. We share, our feelings and what we gained and who we helped, and it builds this connection. And I think that's the strongest benefit of communication and dialogue is, fortifying that connection and, repairing any of the tension and disconnection that happens throughout the week when you disagree or we're both very passionate about different things, and just reaffirming why we're here and why we're here together.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough how much I think it helps with efficiency, because I do feel like that's the thing that people think that it hurts. People don't want to talk about feelings because they think it will be inefficient, but I feel like if you are reconnected and you've gotten the feelings out, then you can be extremely efficient and creative. If you're triggered and frustrated and upset with the other people, all of those creative parts of you are dampened down, and your mind is elsewhere in your upset and frustration. My business partner and I start every meeting with feelings. It usually takes 5 minutes, and then we have tons of time to be creative and productive and get tons of things done.
Yeah, simmering resentment is a cancer on organizations. And creating space for intimacy, for processing feelings, for diffusing the tension that can grow into resentment is a hugely important gift to your employees. And not only that, I think it's better for the bottom line.
Just to add on, yeah, I think unexpressed feelings can become really toxic, as you said, and that toxicity, when it's allowed to spread, can really undo kind of the best that's possible for your organization. And so if you look at it from an energetic perspective, the more I can be in tune with my energy and kind of bring my energetic best to my work, and if I can bring my best and my partners can bring their best to the work, it can only create such better conditions for innovation and creativity and just greater possibilities for the organization. It's almost like you can only get so high in an organization, but you can get, the possibilities become even higher if you can tap into that collective energy, that positive energy that comes from connection and intimacy.
Yeah, I just want to add very quickly that in a lot of the communities I move in and folks that I work with who are, maybe not monogamous or kinky or, they pursue some other like alternative lifestyle or sexual activities, they operate all the time with this real fear, this deep and abiding fear that they're going to be found out in their professional worlds. And I want to say that that background fear also adds inefficiency, also prevents connection between employees, between folks on teams, right? And so it's not just about whether folks have the ability to connect with each other interpersonally and process feelings. It's also about whether there is a culture that encourages people to be their authentic selves. And I don't necessarily mean that people need to be able to come to work and talk about the kinky sex they had the night before, but the fear again of being found out, especially as we live so much of our lives online, and we have accounts on Tinder and Bumble and Field, formerly known as Thrinder, and and OkCupid and so on and so forth. The risk of being found out grows exponentially more. And so, removing the choice that people have to make between asking for what they really want in their personal lives and, being and keeping their jobs, makes, I think, for safer, better, more connected workplaces.
Yeah, and
Last-
obviously adding on that for like queer people, trans, non-binary person who can literally get fired because they found out that they are trans. Having this, even if you don't have any trans or non-binary employees that you are out and your own company that you know of, the fact that you can already implement a better emotional place where feelings are more aware is like the ground zero of like having more diversity people, having more like discussions that are like not taboo anymore, and having welcoming more diverse people. Definitely start by having already like be aware of your own feelings and accepting other people's feeling and growing from that.
Beautiful. Two things I'll add to the benefits aspect are that it's fascinating how much we care about creativity and fostering creativity at work, and yet we also completely cordon off our connection to our sexual energy. Because if you look in any of the major long-standing world traditions around health or spirituality, those two things are the same thing. So good luck being your most creative self without a very powerful fuel source. We're terrified of it. That's a larger societal issue, much longer conversation. Go learn from Celeste. But that's one very important thing. The second aspect has evacuated my consciousness, so I'm not going to talk about it. Oh, front. Jenny in the front just said we haven't defined intimacy. Well, there was the definition that if safety is being able to breathe, then intimacy is being able to breathe together. So we might come back to it. But thank you for the call out. We'll have a Q&A. In terms of our first steps towards change, and as I steward our progress in our time container, how can we begin to relate through discomfort? And I'm going to ask this to our panelists in what's required of us internally to relate through discomfort. And to try and keep your responses to a focused couple sentences.
Yeah, so my response is going to be about what you also learned yesterday with Adam, the author of Originals, like the importance of how unfamiliar has to be familiar. And discomfort comes from like unknown, and discomfort when you're not doing the work to know more becomes fear and even resentful and even like aggression. So you need, like you said, you need 10 to 20 times to see something before it's getting familiar. And for all the, I'm very focused on trans and non-binary situation, and I'm sure you have more input. And the more you see, the more trans people, non-binary people, different diversity, different origins people are going to be visible everywhere in the media, in your own company, the way it's like embraced and supported, the less it's going to be discomfortable because you're actually going to make your employees and yourself more aware of it. And then it's habits, and it's part of, I'm aware now, I'm okay with that. The same way like gay men were like still a big issue 20 years ago, and now we're like more and more into like, it's less weird, and we have new opportunities to like learn and get less uncomfortable.
I think something else that's required of us in order to move these conversations forward is to check in with ourselves and to find that familiarity and that comfort within ourselves, because without that, it's hard to relate and connect to someone else. And so creating that self-check-in space and self-care is just as important as creating the space to check in with each other. And yeah.
So to speak directly to intimacy, because I think it's key to this issue, deepening of intimacy is when you let other people see the parts of yourself that you're afraid that they won't accept. And to bring in a piece of discomfort means to let people see those parts. Because when you say things that are hard for you, you might cry. You might say them in a way that's a little bit mean, but you don't mean to, or you might blame other people. And so we're hiding all of these parts of ourselves, and then we stay completely separate. And the more that we're able to say, I'm not probably going to say this right, but I want to clear the air with you, that then we're starting to show parts of ourselves that we're afraid won't be accepted, then we deepen intimacy.
I just would add on. I do think it's important and necessary to increase our consciousness about our own feelings, and so what are the areas of ourselves that feel uncomfortable, and how do we become conscious of that as maybe even a first step. And also having self-compassion. So I know as an older Black gay man, I've had a lot of shame over my life. And so the ability for me to just first accept that I have shame and to be able to be curious about, well, what does that mean and why is that, for me was a powerful and necessary first step. And then being able to extend from self-compassion to just compassion for others and being really authentically curious and wanting to care for other people and care about them.
Great. We'll wrap it there. Thank you so much. So now we're going to come back to being together and doing some skill building. As we show and practice revealing vulnerable parts and receiving vulnerable sharing. Celeste, would you like to take us into the intro to repair?
Yeah, so repair happens most effectively if we can talk to people about how they're impacting us without blaming or shaming the other person, and also take some responsibility for our part in any conflict. And so what I want to offer you is an exercise where it's just going to go in one direction, but you can get the idea of it, and we'll give an example here, where you talk about something that you have with someone at work that's challenging. Very briefly, a couple of sentences, my coworker this, my boss this, and then you pretend that the person across from you is that person, and you share vulnerably how the way that they're acting impacts you, and then you, at the end, you share how it impacts you, and then that person listens as though they are your coworker. So they say, we'll give you a demonstration. And then at the end, you cop to something that you might be doing to make it worse. So it's much easier to see how this works by actually watching it. So I'm going to tell William something that's hard about my business partner and I. And I always use real examples. I'm not making anything up here. And then William's going to pretend to be my business partner and hear how he's impacting me. And then I'm going to cop to something that I do that makes the situation worse. Okay? Good?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the issues that I have with my business partner is that she's one of these real CEO, world builder types, and she wants to go into our business meetings all the time and just make decisions. She always wants me to help her make decisions. And then I feel completely inadequate and shut down, and I can't do all of the things that are really good that I'm good at because I'm I don't know how to help you with this decision. Find someone else. So I just want to express that to you as though you're her. Okay.
Yeah.
So I noticed that when we start our business meetings, I always go into them with this feeling of okay, we're going to get something done, and then you start wanting to make big decisions about the business, which I know is your feeling about getting, that's how you define getting something done. But I feel totally inadequate in those conversations. And so I start to feel shut down and check out.
Yeah, I can really see how I am impacting you. It sounds like I could give you a lot more space before making or asking us to make those really big decisions, and give you more space to do the things that you feel really comfortable doing and that you're really good at. And sorry for pushing you so hard.
That feels really good, and I know one of the things that I do that contributes to this is that I will just sort of cope with a situation and avoid bringing it up, and then maybe start avoiding you. So I want to shift that also.
Thank you so much for the demo. So, part of the practice of this is that oftentimes we feel we don't even have the language. So, you get to practice playing around with language that might be uncomfortable with someone that you don't know, and you're going to hold each other gently, and it's going to be awesome. So, one of you will be a speaker, one of you will be a listener. That will unfold, and you have prompts on the slides to understand some of the signposts that you're going for. You have a couple minutes, about like 3, and I'll call you back with the bell. See you soon.
3 for the whole.
And now we're going to come back together, and we're going to enter into our third movement. So, if we set the stage, dove into what safety and intimacy mean, what they can mean, where we are, what the benefits could be of bringing it into work, let's start fleshing out what a vision for professional intimacy could look like. This concept may be completely foreign to any one of us, because we don't see it. So let's start envisioning together. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are we doing? What's possible? So, what are different aspects of a vision that we could hold together for professional intimacy?
Hey, I'm always start, I'm sorry. For me, the big word should be care, like care on here. So one of the bigger thing I can see, especially in HR, leadership, ERGs, people who they're in position to actually do some good things, and there's some of the time they either have no budget, they're shy, they're worried for their own position at the company. There's a lot of things we want to do. I truly believe that everyone has kindness in their selves. So caring for other human beings is part of what we do, and we have so many other stuff in our environment, like stuff that we cannot control. So yes, making a movement to care for other people might make you at risk, and how can we make that less of a risk? And one thing I see with our specific trans and non-binary issue that we try to help is like avoiding the discussion of the need, for example, for gender-neutral bathrooms. Just plainly avoiding it because it's complicated to change bathroom, which is not. Just a sign, gender-neutral bathroom cost $2 at the FedEx, just saying. But the fact that we avoid that discussion because it's a discomfort, because it's uncomfortable, the fact that we don't really take into account of the people who need that bathroom, gender-neutral bathroom, like that means we drop them out. That means as a human being, we do not care about their own issues and identities, and so they don't feel safe at work. That's even worse when they actually get fired for being a transgender person, which still happened in 2018. It is crazy. And for me, believing that we can care for every human in a company should be part of the value of any company. Caring. And if you're, like many of the people we talk to, you want to make a step forward helping that, I think, yes, we have to be at risk, but we have to opening those conversations about intimacy, emotions, is part of it's less a big deal to talk about gender-neutral bathroom when you're already at the beginning of each meeting. You take 5 minutes to share what you feel and how you feel when someone cares for you. Then when you say, hey, we actually have someone who is coming out as transgender in our company. Should we just avoid that person? Not have lunch with that person? Avoid to give that person missions so we don't have to bring that person to the clients? That's easy then. You're safe. And then this person might just commit suicide. I'm sorry, that's what happens with transgender people still, because we all want to be seen, heard, and cared. So either we go that road and you're safe for your own position, or you're making small changes over time so that conversation is not that a big deal when it happens. Sorry, I'm very angry on that subject.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that Max's example points out is that you can't be neutral on a moving train. Culture, like the wider culture, is moving one direction. And if we really want to create actual professional intimacy at work, then we have to actively seek out the ways we can be more welcoming and more inclusive in the workplace. It can't be a passive thing. One example from a place I worked is that there was a domestic partner benefits policy that said that it defined domestic partners as someone you've been living with in a committed, exclusive relationship for at least 6 months. And I was like, wait, exclusive? Really? Like, will the executive director of this organization be knocking on my door to be sure that like I am only dating the one person who I've designated as my domestic partner? Like, is it really my organization's job to be the arbiter of the type of relationship I have, right? I mean, it was an oversight, but it was like a meaningful oversight for people who may not practice exclusivity in their relationships, right? These kinds of things, when we notice them, when we find them, when we take these lenses, help to create an environment in which people don't feel like they have to hide who they are along a range of identities. And I think that we have to do so much better than the Title VII categories of inclusion, right? Like if we're just looking at sex, race, religion, disability was added later, but so on and so forth, then we are missing out on like the full scope of humanity that people might be bringing to work with them or like hiding. And I think it's about, like Max said, creating a culture that prioritizes care.
Beautiful. Yeah, I really want to piggyback on what you said about that. I all the time in my training is I say this sentence. I say people are different. And everybody goes, yeah, I know. Yeah, people are different. Yeah. And it's like everybody's comfortable with a difference until it's a difference that they're not comfortable with. You know what I mean? No, but that's not the way you're supposed to be. And I feel like if we open up our minds to say people are really different, and everybody is a sexual being, an erotic being, everybody has a family, everybody has all of these things going on in their personal life and their choices, and the objectification at work is that we're just, worker bees, and none of that is brought with us. And if we look at humans as diverse, interesting people, and we think, I want to get to know people, I want to know their deeper selves, and I want to be open to differences and embrace differences and celebrate differences, because really the foundation of creativity anyway is that we have a lot of different voices coming in, and this is how we get innovation and exciting practices at work also. So the openness to difference and the receptivity to all of the ways that people are different, I think, is the attitude that I would want for people to engender.
And I believe that, building on that, yesterday Adam gave us a toolkit, a list on the main stage for creating psychological safety in the workplace. And I think what we need to additionally think about is how do we create emotional safety in the workplace and build a toolkit for ourselves in the workplace. And I don't think that anyone externally can do that. I think that's something that has to be built from within, how to create that emotional safety for every individual and then collectively as a community, as a whole, as a unit.
So I've been thinking about using the word community to describe the workplace more than the word culture. And so when I think about the word community, it just evokes for me a whole set of different emotions about that place, the workplace, like a sense of obligation, a sense of belonging to something, a sense of contributing to something, helping to sustain it. And so I find myself really drawn to that construct of the word community. And so when I think of community, I think about, how do you bring people in? How do you prime them to become a contributing member of that group? And so that just feels really important to me. I was an HR person, so what also comes up for me is, and I know a lot of folks here in the room are people as well. But what comes up for me is, I think about offer letters, for example, and here in California we have the at-will clause. And I just was thinking about that the other day, and I thought, gosh, if you're wanting to build a trusting relationship with someone, you have this lovely offer letter like, welcome to our company, we're so great. By the way, we can fire you at any time. You're at will. It's like, to me, that doesn't engender a sense of trust in a community. And so I actually find myself wanting to challenge, how do we think about our contractual or legal relationships with our employees? And might there be a different way of describing that than our at-will clauses? And then I also just think, language is important. So thinking about, how do we craft our policies? Do our policies communicate trust and safety and belonging? I've read many employee handbooks that make me want to poke my eyes out because they just feel like a legal document where I'm the subject of something that makes me feel lesser important or at the effect of the law or the legal situation of the company. And so I just would challenge us all to think about how do those organizational structures and systems and inadvertently cause maybe a sense of fear and mistrust in our organizations.
Beautiful. Is there anything else that you'd like to add to round out this aspect of the conversation before we move into some actions? Feels complete. What I would like to add to the vision for professional intimacy is understanding, as we started with the I feel game and seeing that we really are energetic beings and we're constantly affecting each other in this ping pong or table tennis kind of way, that what we have the authority to do is to cultivate personal postures of trust and generosity and lovingness and extension, and I will reach towards you because I want to invite you in with that energy. Because if I come to you with fear, and it's like, welcome to the company, I'm gonna fire you if I want to. That part, the last part, is what sticks. Our fear, the song of fear, plays through and makes us shut down. So how can we lead in our words, in our actions, in our agreements, with love and extension to each other? Which brings us to an opportunity that you have. So now we're going to move into hearing very briefly from Jay and Max about a tool from Argo Collective, and then you're going to go into a conversation with your partner sitting next to you.
So, add to that last point you made, and it's going to talk about the activity. What we learn from working with many startups and companies in the tech industry is like, if the CEO of the company is on board with all of that, emotionally, vulnerability, more inclusion, everything in the company works better. And if you're a CEO in the room now, if you have impact in very little way to the CEO of the company, you should be that person. You should be that person trying to push even more of the emotional, of the inclusion. Because we worked with many companies where, yes, managers, HR were on board with us, and we were like, yes, let's do it. And no, the CEO was not on board, so nothing happened. And it's like killing all the motivation. Lots of people we talk to quit their job like a bit after, because they're like, what? I thought we were going to do that, and the CEO is not on board. So if you have little power into changing the mind and helping the CEO of your company, or if you're the CEO of the company, think about the huge impact it could have. That's something like we see as being like the main issue in that industry. And for that, we came up with some cards, because we know a lot of people want to do. You want to assistant? No. A lot of people want to do good, and we don't really know how to do it every day. Like, how can we change stuff? We want to do good, we don't know how. So those cards are like inclusion tips, And we have a bunch of them if you want to have a pack after the panel. What we can do now is like, we picked a few of the tips that are on the cards, and we want you to pick the one that's something you can see doing in your workplace or in your life in the next 2 weeks. Don't pick a very hard one. Pick the one you can see doing. That's how habits build on, right? It's like you don't start running a marathon. You start like running like just around the block and you're like dying. So then you get build up. So pick something that is like doable, and then we want you to like for like 2 minutes turn to your neighbor and explain why you picked this one. And most importantly, how you imagine applying this in the next 2 weeks in your job, and then you switch.
So the idea behind these cards and doing this activity is if everyone in the company is doing one small, easy change, something that's not that hard to do, then that's a lot of people doing a lot of things, actually. So when we do our workshops, everyone gets a set of these cards and everyone picks a commitment to a change for the next 2 weeks. And they're not hard. Some of them are very simple. Some of them are challenging because it's okay to challenge ourselves too. But the idea is that if everyone's doing one little thing, that's a lot of things. And so what we're going to do is you're going to look at this list. We picked out a few that might be resonate with all of you, and pick something that you think might be realistic to do over the next 2 weeks, and share it with the person sitting next to you, and share when you think you might envision doing this and putting it into practice and putting it to action. So should we read a few of them? That's great. Or should we?
Yeah. And one thing before we read the list is like, we have one example of a client we had, and 2 days after they did the workshop, one of the commitments we have in the card is like to add your pronouns and your email address, signature, and on their LinkedIn. Why? Because people who are cisgender, meaning they live in the gender they were assigned at birth, it's nothing. It literally costs you nothing if you're a cisgender person to put your pronouns on your LinkedIn or your email signature. It costs a ton for someone who is using either like an they, them pronouns, like we do with Jay. I use he and they. Jay, I use they and them. It costs us a lot when you're transgender woman, especially, and you have to always say people, no, I use she and her. And when you're non-binary person all the time, I use they, them, and then you stop doing it because nobody's following. It costs a lot of mental and emotional energy. For people who are cisgender, it costs literally nothing. That's part of the privilege of being cisgender. And so this person put their pronoun on their LinkedIn profile. 2 days after that, a university reached out to them saying, hey, we have a transgender student who is looking for internship. Sorry, my French is sometimes. Internship. And they're like, we saw that you have your pronouns on your LinkedIn profile, so we assume that might be a safe place for that person. Bam. One pronoun on LinkedIn, one person already having like a better career. Can you realize a transgender person finding their first internship and being able to like move on and grow? So those things they're gonna try to do for 2 weeks might happen to like change someone's life, and that's what we try to do. So
It
you
has
want to
a
read?
ripple effect.
Yeah, you want to read some of them, or maybe it's obvious. I don't know.
We'll just let people read them and dive into it. Thank you so much. So go ahead and turn to someone next to you and have your conversation, and we'll come back soon. Thank you so much for making your commitments and sharing with your new friends next to you. Now we're going to open it up for about 10 minutes of Q&A. So Culture First friends in the back have mics. And who has a question? Yes.
Hi, thank you guys on the panel for being so great. And I'm literally just pulled up my LinkedIn profile to update my preferred pronouns. So thank you for that suggestion. That is fantastic. I have a question for you. I was chatting with my friend here about what happens when the workplace becomes too intimate. And I'll give you a little context. So my best friend at the company is now my manager, which makes having business-like conversations extremely difficult, especially around things about career progression or, I'm struggling with this, or giving difficult feedback on both ends. And I was wondering if you had any advice for navigating a workplace relationship that might be too intimate.
My business partner and co-CEO is also one of my best friends, and that happened. We were in a business partnership, and then we became best friends, so it's a little bit different. But I will say that I'm not sure if there's such a thing, but what it means is that you need to be very open and conscientious and to say, like, I'm scared of talking to you about your progression because of our friendship, and I'm worried about losing our friendship, to actually what I call kind of have the meta conversation, which is to be vulnerable about exactly those fears, to acknowledge that they're real and that both of you have a commitment to talking through the complexity of the dual relationships or triple relationships. That's kind of how I look at it.
And my feeling is with intimacy of any type, whatever the relationship is, comes boundaries. Boundaries are just as important, and establishing those very openly and transparently so that you can say, this is a boundary for me. I need to keep our friendship conversations maybe after work or outside of work, and when we're at work, whatever the boundary is, I think establishing that will be incredibly important for maintaining that intimacy.
You literally said that to me like a few months ago. Like literally that. And the conversation was hard to get at the beginning because it was like, hi, I have something to tell you. And it was wonderful. And it is now. We have actually like last night after a drink, after we actually had a friend conversation. And we didn't talk about that during all day because it's like a work situation, and the friendship conversation was so deep and good because it was the moment to be friends.
Just add on really quickly, and there's a question right here. I think that there's an opportunity to help increase the conversational intelligence of the organization, and so on the opposite side, you could say, oh, let's just not get intimate in our relationships, which is not where we want to go. And so how do we invite intimacy into the organization and help people build the skills to have these conversations?
Well, I think I have the exact opposite problem. So our two founders have a tendency to get extremely defensive if you're trying to have a conversation with them. So conversations like this feel very one-sided. How do you work with someone who really puts up a wall and does not want to have any sort of emotional conversation at all? Is there a way to sort of chip away at that? Or, what would be your recommendation?
I usually cop to my own. I would call them on it, but I would do it in a vulnerable way. I would say, because I'm a very defensive person personally, I am. And usually when you say something to someone that's true about you, it sort of de-shamifies their stress around it. So you could say, I've noticed that I'm a really defensive person sometimes. When people come up to me, I just want to shut it down if I ever feel like something's telling me I've done something wrong. I notice sometimes that happens to you also. Would you be willing to talk about that a little bit? Because I do feel like sometimes it shuts the other employees down, and it makes it so there's not a good conversation. So that's often how I lead, instead of just telling people what's wrong with them, because then the defensive comes right away, right? So find someone good defensive in your organization and have them make
I also feel that often when someone is feeling defensive, it's because they're feeling misunderstood or they're not feeling heard completely. So inviting them to share what it is they're feeling and opening it up and say, I see that you're pulling back from this. What's going on for you? Can you explain where you're coming from? And give them the floor, actually, to express themselves and maybe mirror it back to them. I'm hearing that you are having trouble with this concept. Is that right? And it can sometimes diffuse that defensiveness because a lot of times that conflict comes from misunderstanding. And when you bring it into the open air and you clarify, it can sometimes diffuse that.
I think also sometimes, like naming it as defensiveness. I mean, people have so many defensive strategies that could be like lumped under this very big category. And so naming the specific behavior and its impact on you or the impact that you're seeing on the organization could be a more helpful way. So instead of, Mr. Smith, you're really defensive and here's why this sucks. It's like, well, Mr. Smith, when you respond in this angry way, with anger, when I make a suggestion, it really shuts me down and makes it hard for me to bring my best self or my most creative self to the workplace. And so using that like nonviolent communication magic can sometimes be magic.
Lovely. We have a question over here, and then to Brad, and Brad will be our last.
Hi, thank you so much, first of all. We live in a society right now that's obviously very split and torn and publicly. I would think it's safe to say that people in this room are advocates and want this to be happening. I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on sort of the benefit or the responsibility of being that educator and bringing someone who maybe isn't as tolerant into a new place, versus having sort of like a no jerks, zero tolerance policy and building a work environment that's full of just people who are naturally very inclusive?
I do not believe on no jerks, just because I don't feel anyone was born being a jerk. I feel like kindness is everywhere. It's just the way you build up on your whole life, being heard, being like having the floor for you makes you being like resentful and a jerk. So there's always a way. At some point you try. If it's really at some point like you see that you try a lot and it's not working. Like yesterday, I don't remember who, like Susan Cain said like at some point you fire them if it's not like. But trying, like I don't think you can even turn a very kind person into a jerk if your company culture doesn't really embrace and have empathy and emotions and room and being understandable. You could become a jerk just because you not feel heard. I'm sure like all of us, we had jobs where we're like, at some point, we did not talk to anyone, or we're like, I wanted to go in the morning even though it started well, and then at some point something did not happen, something bad happened, it was not well resolved. Even if it's not within you, like your own job, but you see someone's getting fired for something that's unfair, you will start to hate your company, and then you don't have a room for like sharing that. Then at some point you're like, you're very like not into it anymore, and then you can be a jerk because you're like, I don't want to work on that. So then you drop the whole team. Like, so bringing more intimacy, emotions can only be good as like improving situations. Definitely when it starts from scratch, you have a breathe from the get-go, but I think we can still improve.
And I think that setting standards for behavior is really important. So if someone is having a really negative impact on people of color or trans folks or whatever, then that absolutely has to be addressed. But I think that we can also have these conversations without making it into like the wokeness Olympics, and I think it's actually a really dangerous place, because then everyone's a jerk, it's less, I think, about like the sort of like how woke you can be than it is about like making it okay to make mistakes, because making it okay to make mistakes encourages people to take a risk and connect across difference. At the same time, if people are being like actively harmful and exclusive, then I think that that's where policy's role comes in.
Last response from Celeste.
I was with my Lyft driver today, and we were talking about where I was going, and he was like, what really sucks about me too? Like, I never can tell a woman how beautiful she is, who gets into my car. And I said, I know that really sucks. I could tell, like, he was trying to figure it out. And there was lots of things that he was saying during the conversation, which, my earlier, fiery feminist self would have been like, you bastard, But I just listened and I empathized because he really was just saying, I would love to connect with people. And I got where he was coming from. And then we started talking about, he says, did you know that now they're saying if you start having sex with a woman and then she says no, that then you keep going, that means it's rape? And then he started laughing, right? Which would have really upset me. But I said, yeah, I know, I hear you. I do believe that that's rape. And I also think that women often aren't believed, especially in the courts. And he said, really? I thought that everybody gets in trouble for it. And I said, no, not really. Actually, a lot of women get shamed. And he was open to hearing what I had to say. But if I had started getting angry at the things that he had said, and said, what a jerk, then we wouldn't have been able to have that conversation. So I've worked so hard to just be people are trying and trying to understand. And, until I think this person really isn't trying, I'm going to keep trying with them.
I'm actually we need to close that one because I want to have the last question from Brad.
So my question is, I think we have a lot of believers, as someone mentioned, or champions here, and so I have this image of everyone leaving here and getting pounced on by lawyers.
Yes.
Literally. If you go back into your role and you have this conversation about sexual energy or intimacy, or even if we're not talking about sex at work, but that just being a creative force. So what can you share with us to arm us with the ability to have an intelligent and skillful conversation with lawyers and what their role in this is? And I am saying this partly from the protector and partly from the skeptic. So just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much for that. And my framing for the panelists is we'll aim to just have 2 of you respond so that we have enough time to close for your closing remarks. And I haven't invited much in this conversation, but if you feel called, Chris, I want to invite Chris because of his experience having held an HR role.
So I think it begins with a conversation, and so I was lucky in my career to have legal advisors who were open to having the conversation and exploring the various possibilities within the law. And so I think it begins with the values and principles of your organization and the kind of community that you're wanting to build. So I always began my conversations with my legal counsel around, this is our aspiration. Now, how do we get there in a way that honors the law, but also honors the community we're trying to build? So really, that's where I would begin. I think this is really at the core about building connection and building intimacy within a space that feels trusting and safe. And so it's not, trying to build a place that's a free-for-all where, people might perceive that lots of bad things are going to happen. And so I would start with the aspiration and just, have it be a conversation that unfolds in a way, hopefully, that can get to creating the kind of community that you really want to have in your organization.
And Celeste to finish.
So, I've heard about some research on doctors getting sued and that they're much less likely to get sued if they listen to their patients' concerns and complaints and care about their feelings. So basically, doctors with good bedside manner are much less likely to get sued. I think the chances of people getting sued go up greatly when they shut people's feelings down and they just say, oh, well, talk to my lawyer about that, right? I think that's one piece. And then also, saying to your lawyer, yes, we could pretend that this doesn't exist, but I happen to know 12 people who are dating in my organization right now, so I can have a no dating policy, and this is the result. So can we talk about what the other options are, for example, to talk about reality?
Yeah, just a quick add-on. In my experience, a lot of policies and organizations are written for the 1% of people who might break the law. And so why not craft your handbooks and other policies that look to treat people as adults and professionals, and then work with the 1% who break the rules appropriately. And so that's what I would also encourage us to all think about.
Beautiful. Thank you all so much. Thank you to those of you who've been here. And as we bring this exploration to a close, I'm going to ask my lovely panelists up here to drop into yourself and listen to, if you could only give our friends in the room one thing, one sentence, what do you want to leave them with?
I would say a deeper acceptance of themselves and others.
Yeah, being vulnerable and getting growth from that.
To consider how it would feel for you to belong to a space and to create a space where everyone feels they belong there.
To think about love, and to quote M. Scott Peck, that love is the will to extend one's self for the purpose of one's own spiritual growth and the spiritual growth of another.
I'm just going to repeat myself from earlier. You can't be neutral on a moving train. You gotta resist.
Thank you so much to the 5 of you. I appreciate your time and your wisdom. Thank you so much for participating. It's been a pleasure. Have a lovely rest of your day.